tripping HOA tried to demolish my backyard oasis. The morning they brought the bulldozers, at exactly 7:11 a.m., I watched a bulldozer stop in front of my backyard. Behind it stood the HOA president with a smug smile, 3 contractors, and 2 sheriff's deputies. She proudly announced, "By noon, this illegal backyard oasis will be gone." What she didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for this exact day. Inside my kitchen sat one sealed envelope containing a court order that would stop every machine, expose years of HOA corruption, and cost her position, her reputation, and eventually her house. So before we get into today's unbelievable HOA story, let me know in the comments, what state are you watching from? I read every comment, and I love seeing where our Vanessa's HOA family is watching from. Now, let me tell you how one power-hungry HOA president picked the wrong homeowner to intimidate the backyard that started a war. My name is Ethan Carter, and until 3 years ago, I thought retirement would be peaceful. After selling my commercial landscaping company for more money than I ever expected, I bought a beautiful 5-acre property just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I wasn't looking for luxury. I wanted peace. The house was modest. The land was beautiful. And behind it sat the backyard I'd dreamed about building for nearly 20 years. I designed every inch myself. A stone waterfall, a crystal clear koi pond, a cedar gazebo overlooking the garden, walking paths lined with Japanese maples, a fire pit surrounded by handcrafted stone seating. At night, soft landscape lights reflected across the water, creating a view that reminded me of the resorts my company used to design. It wasn't built to impress anyone. It was built to honor my late wife, Claire. She had always dreamed of having a peaceful backyard where we could watch sunsets together after retirement. Cancer took her before we ever got that chance. So after she was gone, I built it anyway. Every tree, every flower, every stone was for her. That's why what happened next felt personal. Across the road sat a brand new subdivision called Oak Ridge Estates. Beautiful homes, perfect lawns, luxury cars, and, of course, an HOA. Thankfully, my property wasn't part of it. I confirmed that with the county before buying the land. No HOA fees, no HOA rules, just freedom. Or so I thought. About a month after moving in, someone knocked on my front door. Standing there was a woman wearing expensive sunglasses, a perfectly pressed blazer, and a smile that somehow felt more like a warning than a greeting. "Good afternoon," she said. "I'm Victoria Reynolds, president of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association." I smiled politely. "Nice to meet you." She handed me a thick folder. "Our community standards." I looked at the folder, then back at her. "I think you've got the wrong house." "No," she replied confidently. "We expect all neighboring properties to maintain the same visual standards as our community." I almost laughed. "My property isn't part of your HOA." Her smile faded for just a second. "We'll discuss that later." Then she turned around and walked away. I stood there holding the folder, wondering if that conversation had actually happened. I tossed the folder onto the kitchen counter and forgot about it. That was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Every few days, I found anonymous complaints taped to my mailbox. "Your waterfall creates unnecessary noise." "Garden lighting negatively impacts nearby homes." "Your trees obstruct community views." The complaints became more ridiculous every week. One letter actually claimed my koi pond attracted undesirable wildlife. Apparently, fish were now violating HOA standards. I ignored every letter. After all, they had no authority over my property. Then one Saturday morning, I walked outside and found 3 survey flags pushed into my backyard, not near the property line. Inside my backyard, someone had marked a straight line directly through my garden. At first, I thought it was a mistake, until I noticed fresh spray paint on the grass. Large orange arrows pointed toward my gazebo. I immediately checked my security cameras. The footage showed Victoria arriving the previous evening with 2 contractors. She walked through my backyard without permission, pointed at different sections, measured distances, then placed the flags herself. I couldn't believe what I was watching. She hadn't just complained about my property. She had trespassed onto it. The next morning, I drove straight to the county planning office. The employee behind the counter pulled up my property records. Everything was exactly as I expected. The land belonged entirely to me. No easements. No HOA authority. No pending construction permits. Nothing. Before leaving, I asked one question. Has anyone requested information about my property recently? The clerk hesitated, then nodded. Actually, she turned her monitor toward me. Someone from Oak Ridge Estates submitted paperwork asking about expanding their community green space. My stomach tightened. Did it include my address? She looked again. It did. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about landscaping anymore. Victoria wasn't trying to control my backyard. She wanted it, and somehow, she believed she could get it. That evening, I walked through my garden more slowly than usual. The waterfall flowed peacefully. The koi swam beneath the lilac. The wind moved gently through the maple trees Claire had always loved. I promised myself one thing. No matter what happened, no one was taking this place away from me. Not an HOA. Not a lawyer. Not even a bulldozer. Because if Victoria Reynolds wanted a fight, she had just declared war against the one man who had spent 30 years building landscapes and knew every property law that protected them. What I didn't know was that she had already signed a demolition contract. And in less than 2 weeks, bulldozers would be heading straight for my backyard. Power-tripping HOA tried to demolish my backyard Oasis. The HOA that crossed the line. At 6:48 a.m., I received a certified letter that changed everything. It wasn't another complaint. It wasn't another warning. It was a demolition notice. The HOA had officially approved the removal of my backyard, claiming it violated community expansion rights. And attached to it was a court order I had never seen before, signed using my property address. That's when I realized this wasn't just bullying anymore. This was organized fraud. And I had exactly 48 hours before the bulldozers returned. The paperwork wore bacons. I stood in my kitchen holding the letter, reading it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Victoria Reynolds had escalated everything. Not just complaints. Not just trespassing. Now she had produced legal paperwork claiming the HOA had authority to reclaim a portion of my backyard for community use. That was impossible. And yet, there it was. Stamped, signed, filed. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my attorney. The lawyer's reaction. My attorney, Mark Ellison, had been handling property law for over 20 years. He read the document once, then again. Then he leaned back in his chair. "This is fake," he said immediately. I exhaled slightly. Good. But then he added something that made my stomach drop. Fake, but professionally done. Whoever created this knew exactly what they were doing. He pointed at the signature. This isn't just forgery. This is structured fraud. That word changed everything. Fraud meant criminal exposure, not just HOA conflict. The hidden problem. Mark pulled up my county records. Everything looked normal at first. Then he frowned. That's strange. What? There's a temporary zoning amendment attached to your parcel. I leaned forward. I never approved anything. You didn't, he said, but someone submitted it on your behalf. That hit like a punch. Someone had been using my identity to modify land records. Victoria wasn't just aggressive. She was organized. Back at the property. When I returned home that evening, something felt off. Too quiet. No birds near the fence line. No workers in sight. Just my backyard. And a white marking flag planted near the edge of the gazebo. A new one. Fresh. Different color. I walked closer and saw it. A survey line. Extended. Deeper into my property than before. They weren't waiting for permission anymore. They were measuring for demolition. The confrontation. I drove straight across the road to Oak Ridge Estates. Victoria was standing near the entrance with 2 board members. She smiled like nothing was wrong. Ethan, she said, I see you got our notice. I held up the document. Explain this. She didn't even look nervous. It's simple. The HOA voted to reclaim unused land for community expansion. I laughed once. You can't reclaim private property. She tilted her head slightly. We already started the process. That's when I noticed something. The 2 board members weren't surprised by her words. They were backing her. This wasn't one person acting alone. This was coordinated. The threat. I stepped closer. You filed false documents using my address. Victoria smiled calmly. If you're going to be difficult, we'll let the county handle it. Then she said something I'll never forget. Bulldozers arrive Monday morning. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. And just like that, she walked away, leaving me standing there. Realizing I had 48 hours to stop a legal machine already in motion. Power-tripping HOA tried to demolish my backyard oasis. The forged records. At 11:03 p.m., I broke into my own property record system. What I found made my hands go cold. Someone had forged a county zoning approval using my name and parcel number. But that wasn't the worst part. The document had been submitted by an HOA-connected contractor and already approved in the system, which meant one thing. This wasn't just Victoria anymore. This was inside the county system. And if I didn't act fast, my backyard would legally cease to exist by sunrise. The system was already compromised. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed at my desk going line by line through every document Mark had flagged. Something didn't add up. The demolition order wasn't just fake, it was processed through a legitimate county portal. That meant someone had access, either stolen credentials or inside help. I called Mark immediately. They didn't just forge paperwork, I said. They got it approved. There was silence on the line. Then he said the worst possible thing. Then you're not dealing with an HOA dispute anymore. What am I dealing with? A coordinated property fraud case. The hidden contractor? The next morning, I dug into the demolition contractor listed on the order. Stonewall Development Services. On paper, they looked legitimate, licensed, bonded, approved for municipal work. But something felt off. So I made a call. The county clerk hesitated when I asked about them. Then she said something quietly. They do a lot of HOA projects, but most of them come through one board member. My stomach tightened. Victoria. A pause. Yes, that was the moment everything became clear. Victoria wasn't just using authority. She was reading contracts through a company she controlled indirectly. Back at the backyard, when I returned home, I saw new markings, more survey flags, more boundary lines, and this time, a red paint mark on the stone wall my grandfather built. That wall had stood for decades. Storms, floods, time. But now it had a bright red X painted on it. A demolition target. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't just legal anymore. This was personal. The anonymous call. At 2:14 p.m., my phone rang. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. A woman's voice came through, shaking. You need to stop them. Who is this? I used to work with the HOA board. My grip tightened. What are they doing? A pause. Then.
The expansion project isn't just your backyard. My heart slowed. What do you mean? They've been slowly acquiring adjacent parcels on paper for years. She hesitated, then dropped the final bomb. Your land is the last piece they need to connect the subdivision to the highway. Silence. My entire backyard wasn't the goal. It was the missing link in a multi-million-dollar land expansion plan. The truth about Victoria. That evening, I pulled every public record I could find. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. Victoria Reynolds wasn't just HOA president. She was also listed as a minor stakeholder in a regional development group tied to property development around Oak Ridge Estates. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about land value, and my property was sitting in the middle of it. The final warning. At 6:41 p.m., I received one final message from Victoria. No subject, just 3 words. Last chance, Ethan. I looked out at my backyard. The waterfall still ran. The koi still swam. The gazebo still stood where Claire once dreamed it would be. And I realized something very clearly. If I didn't stop this now, there would be nothing left to protect. Not even the memory of it. I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A land use attorney who once told me, if someone tries to take your land illegally, don't defend it. Attack first.